It was another ordinary Tuesday morning in Palo Alto, California. Elon Musk sipped his coffee, the faint aroma of roasted beans lingering as he readied himself for the commute to Tesla's headquarters. His mind buzzed with the usual storm of ideas: battery innovations, Mars colonization plans, and the latest chaos on X, formerly Twitter. Yet, amid the whirlwind of his life, there was one curious constant: the girl at the window. For months now, she had been there every morning, standing behind a slightly smudged pane of glass in a modest house along El Camino Real. She was a slip of a child, with a gap-toothed grin that she flashed as she waved enthusiastically. At first, Elon thought little of it, a coincidence maybe, but over time her cheerful presence became a fixture of his routine, an inexplicable comfort in the maelstrom of his existence. There was something grounding about her simplicity. No pretense, no agenda, just a genuine, innocent smile. He began looking forward to it, that fleeting moment when he'd glance up from the road and see her small hand fluttering like a flag of optimism. It reminded him of his own kids, how their joy seemed impervious to the cynicism of the adult world. Today, though, his thoughts were more preoccupied than usual. A high-stakes investor meeting awaited him, and his calendar was crammed tighter than a rocket launch schedule. Still, as he approached the familiar stretch of road, his eyes instinctively searched for her face in the window. What he saw, or rather what he didn't see, sent an unexpected pang through his chest. The window was empty. The curtains were drawn, and there was no sign of the little girl. For a moment, Elon told himself not to overthink it. Kids have lives too, right? But the nagging thought stayed with him. Something about the absence felt wrong. As the Tesla Model S cruised past the quiet neighborhood, Elon found himself glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to catch a glimpse of her at the last second. But there was nothing, just the same drawn curtains and a growing sense of disquiet gnawing at him. He shook his head, trying to push the thought aside. "She's probably just busy," he muttered to himself, though the words felt hollow. There was a peculiar weight to the scene that refused to leave him. The house seemed darker somehow, almost abandoned. He thought of the newspapers that had been stacking up on the lawn over the past week. He had noticed them before, but hadn't given them much thought. The rest of his drive was uncharacteristically quiet. Usually, his mind would be racing with solutions to problems he hadn't even encountered yet. Today, all he could think about was that empty window and the little girl who wasn't there. At Tesla, the day moved in its usual breakneck rhythm. Engineers presented updates, prototypes demanded his attention, and his inbox was a battlefield of urgent emails. Yet, through it all, the image of that house clung to him like a shadow. By the afternoon, it was unbearable. He excused himself from a meeting, claiming a sudden need to run an errand. His team exchanged puzzled glances. This wasn't like him. Elon, known for his relentless focus, rarely veered off course, but today something was different. As he drove back toward the neighborhood, he realized how little he actually knew about the girl. What was her name? Why was she always by the window? And why, out of all the chaos in his life, did this absence bother him so deeply? When he reached the house, he parked across the street and stared at it for a long moment. The curtains remained drawn, and the newspapers still cluttered the lawn, curling at the edges from exposure to the sun. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Summoning his resolve, Elon stepped out of the car. The late afternoon sun beat down on his shoulders as he crossed the street, his footsteps crunching on the gravel of the driveway. He hesitated for a moment at the door, then knocked firmly. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. The silence was unnerving. He tried the doorbell, its faint chime echoing inside the house, but there was still no response. A sense of urgency began to build in his chest. He glanced around, looking for signs of movement, neighbors, passers-by, but the street was eerily quiet. "Elon?" a voice called out from behind. He turned to see an elderly woman peering out from her porch a few doors down. Her expression was a mix of curiosity and concern. "Is something wrong?" "I'm not sure," he replied, gesturing to the house. "Do you know the family here?" The woman squinted, her face softening with recognition. "Oh, the little girl and her mom? Sweet family. I haven't seen them in days. Figured they went out of town or something." Elon frowned. "Does that happen often?" She shook her head. "No, not really. They keep to themselves, but the girl, She's always at that window. It's strange now that you mention it." A chill, not of fear but of determination, coursed through him. "I think I need to check on them." Elon felt a strange sense of duty as he approached the house again. He wasn't one to meddle in people's lives. His world revolved around rockets and electric cars, not quiet neighborhoods and missing smiles. Yet here he was, standing on a stranger's porch, unable to walk away. He tried the doorbell one more time. The chime echoed faintly, swallowed by the stillness within. He pressed his ear to the door, straining to catch any sound, voices, footsteps, anything, but the house remained silent. The elderly neighbor called out again, "Try the back door. It's usually unlocked." He glanced at her, surprised. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "They're not the type to keep it locked. Small-town habits die hard, I suppose." Reluctantly, Elon made his way around the side of the house, brushing past overgrown bushes and a stray bicycle leaning against the wall. The backyard was modest, with a rusty swing set and a few toys scattered across the patchy grass. It looked lived in, yet untouched for days. The back door creaked as he pushed it open. She was right. It hadn't been locked. He hesitated for a moment on the threshold, his heart pounding. Stepping inside felt invasive, but he told himself it was necessary. Something wasn't right. The air inside was stale, carrying a faint metallic tang that set him on edge. The kitchen was neat but showed signs of a sudden interruption. An open cereal box on the counter, a glass of milk abandoned mid-pour. His eyes darted to the fridge, where brightly colored magnets held up crayon drawings and a few family photos. In one, the little girl beamed as she clutched a stuffed bear. In another, she stood beside a woman, her mother, presumably, with the same wide grin. "Hello?" Elon called out, his voice breaking the eerie quiet. He stepped further into the house, his footsteps muffled by the carpeted floor. There was no response. He moved cautiously, scanning each room as he went. The living room was tidy, with a worn couch and a TV remote perched neatly on the armrest. A stack of mail sat unopened on the coffee table, and a faint layer of dust had begun to settle. As he climbed the stairs, the atmosphere grew heavier. The hallway was dim, illuminated only by the weak sunlight filtering through a narrow window. Doors lined the corridor, each one closed. He started with the first, pushing it open to reveal a child's bedroom. It was unmistakably hers. The walls were painted in soft pastels, adorned with posters of cartoon characters and glowing star stickers. The bed was unmade, the covers twisted as though she had left in a hurry. A stuffed bear, likely the same one from the photo, lay on the floor, one ear chewed and fraying. "Elon?" The neighbor's voice startled him. She was standing at the back door, peering inside hesitantly. "Anything?" "Not yet," he replied, his tone sharper than he intended. He quickly softened it. "Thanks for staying close." The next door led to a bathroom. Clean, ordinary, nothing out of place. The last door at the end of the hall, however, gave him pause. Something about it felt different. He reached for the knob, his breath catching as he turned it. Inside, the room was empty, save for a desk and a laptop. But on the desk sat an envelope, hastily scrawled with 2 words, "Help us." Elon's heart raced as he picked up the envelope. The words on the front, "Help us," were written in a childlike scrawl, the edges of the paper smudged as though handled in haste. He opened it carefully, revealing a single sheet of paper inside. The note was brief but chilling. "We're trapped. Please get help. Don't tell anyone. They're watching." The handwriting was uneven, trembling, as if written under immense pressure. His mind churned with questions. Who was they? What did the girl mean by watching? A dozen scenarios ran through his head, none of them good. He turned to the neighbor, who was still lingering at the back door. "Do you know if they've had any trouble with anyone? Strange visitors, anything like that?" The woman furrowed her brow. "Not that I know of. They mostly keep to themselves. The mother works long hours, I think at a diner downtown. The girl, well, she's always here." Elon folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. "I'm going to check the rest of the house." The neighbor nodded, her expression a mix of worry and curiosity. "I'll stay here in case they come back." Elon continued his search, his senses heightened now that he knew something sinister was at play. In the master bedroom, he found more signs of a life interrupted. A suitcase half-packed on the bed, clothes strewn across the floor. On the nightstand, a cell phone lay abandoned, its screen cracked. He picked it up and pressed the power button, but it was dead. As he moved back into the hallway, a faint noise caught his attention. It was coming from downstairs, a rhythmic tapping, like metal against glass. His pulse quickened. He followed the sound, descending the stairs slowly, his footsteps deliberate. The noise led him to the basement door, which was slightly ajar. A chill washed over him as he reached for the handle and pulled it open. The tapping grew louder, echoing up the dark stairwell. With his phone's flashlight in hand, he descended cautiously, each step creaking beneath his weight. The basement was unfinished, its concrete walls bare and cold. In the center of the room stood a water heater, and next to it, a small locked door. More of a hatch, really. The tapping was coming from behind it. "Elon?" The neighbor's voice called faintly from above. "Is everything okay?" "Stay upstairs," he replied, his voice firm. "I'll check it out." He knelt by the hatch, his flashlight illuminating the padlock that secured it. The lock was old, its metal rusted, but it held fast. He glanced around the room and spotted a toolbox on a nearby shelf. Inside, he found a hammer and a crowbar. With a few determined strikes, the lock gave way, clattering to the floor. He hesitated, gripping the edge of the hatch. Taking a deep breath, he pulled it open. Inside, huddled in the cramped space, were the girl and her mother. Their faces were pale, their clothes disheveled. The mother's arms were wrapped protectively around her daughter, her eyes wide with fear. "It's okay," Elon said, his voice calm but urgent. "You're safe now." The mother blinked up at Elon, her face a mask of exhaustion and fear. She pulled her daughter closer, shielding her as though unsure whether to trust him. The little girl, however, recognized him immediately. "You're the man from the car," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her eyes, usually so bright and full of life, were red-rimmed and hollow. Elon crouched down, keeping his voice gentle. "Yes, it's me. You wave at me every morning, remember? I'm here to help." The mother finally spoke, her voice hoarse and trembling. "You shouldn't be here. They'll come back." "Who will?" Elon asked, his brow furrowing. "What's going on? Why are you down here?" She hesitated, her gaze darting toward the basement stairs as though expecting someone to appear at any moment. "They're loan sharks," she said finally. "I got behind on payments. I thought I could catch up, but they started threatening us. Then 2 days ago, they came to the house. They said if I didn't pay by the end of the week—" Her voice broke, and the little girl clung to her tighter. "They locked us down here," she continued after a moment, her words rushing out in a mix of fear and desperation. "Said they'd be back to collect. I didn't know what to do. I wrote the note hoping someone would find it. Thank God you did." Elon's mind raced. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and the picture they painted was grim. This wasn't just about money. These people had gone beyond intimidation to outright imprisonment. "Do they know where you work?" he asked. The mother nodded. "They've been following me for weeks. I couldn't call the police. They said they'd hurt her if I did." Elon stood, his jaw tightening as the weight of the situation sank in. He wasn't just dealing with a family in trouble. He was up against dangerous criminals. But walking away wasn't an option. "We need to get you out of here," he said firmly. "Right now." The mother's eyes widened. "But what if they're watching? What if they see us leave?" Elon thought for a moment, then pulled out his phone. "I'll handle that. Just trust me." Elon's fingers moved quickly across his phone's screen as he typed out a message. Within moments, he had reached out to his personal security team, a group accustomed to handling high-stakes situations discreetly. He explained the urgency and gave them the address, instructing them to arrive as quietly as possible. "It's going to be okay," he assured the mother and daughter. "Help is on the way." Minutes passed like hours as they waited in the dim basement. The mother kept glancing at the stairs, her fear palpable. The little girl clung to her bear, her small body trembling against her mother's side. Elon stayed close, his presence a strange mix of calm and determination. Finally, a soft knock echoed from the back door. Elon motioned for the neighbor to answer it, and moments later, 2 men dressed in casual clothes but carrying the quiet confidence of professionals stepped inside. "This is them?" one of the men asked, his tone low. Elon nodded. "We need to get them out of here without being seen. Do we have a vehicle ready?" "Just around the corner," the man replied. We'll take them to a safe location. The mother hesitated, clutching her daughter tightly. Where will we go? What about my job? My house? Elon crouched beside her, his voice firm but reassuring. Your safety comes first. I'll make sure everything else is taken care of. You don't have to face this alone. The security team moved with precision, escorting the family out through the backyard and into an unmarked SUV. Elon stayed behind for a moment, scanning the house one last time. The photos on the fridge, the toys scattered in the yard. It all spoke of a life interrupted by fear and violence. He felt a surge of anger toward the people who had done this. Before leaving, he turned to the elderly neighbor. Thank you for alerting me. If anyone comes looking for them, don't answer the door. Call me directly. She nodded, her face pale but resolute. You'll make sure they're okay? I will, Elon promised, and he meant it. The SUV pulled away from the neighborhood, carrying the mother and daughter to safety. Elon followed behind in his car, the events of the day replaying in his mind. He had faced countless challenges in his career, some of them monumental, but nothing had prepared him for this kind of situation. This wasn't about innovation or business. It was about humanity. The family was taken to a secure location, a modest but comfortable apartment arranged through Elon's team. It was a temporary solution, but it offered the protection they desperately needed. As they settled in, Elon sat with the mother, who seemed on the verge of breaking down. I don't even know how to thank you, she said, tears welling in her eyes. You saved us. You don't need to thank me, he replied. Just focus on your daughter. She needs you to be strong. Over the next few days, Elon mobilized his resources to help the family rebuild their lives. His legal team stepped in, working to secure a restraining order against the loan sharks while investigating their activities. He also reached out to a trusted network of contacts to find the mother a new job, one that paid well and offered stability. For the little girl, he arranged something special, a scholarship fund to ensure her future education was secure. When he told her about it, her eyes lit up for the first time since he'd found her in the basement. You mean I can go to school and be anything I want? She asked, her voice tinged with awe. Anything, Elon said with a smile. What do you want to be? A scientist, she said without hesitation. Like you. Her words struck a chord. He saw in her the same spark of curiosity that had driven him to chase impossible dreams. It reminded him that no matter how advanced the world became, the most powerful force was human connection. Weeks passed, and the family began to rebuild their lives. The mother, now employed at a logistics company through one of Elon's connections, found a sense of stability she hadn't felt in years. The little girl, once fearful and reserved, blossomed in her new school, eager to learn and make friends. Elon kept in touch, visiting occasionally to see how they were doing. Each time, the girl greeted him with the same bright smile that had first caught his attention, though now it carried a deeper meaning. She no longer waved from behind a pane of glass. She ran to him with open arms, a small but tangible sign of trust. One evening, as he sat with the family over dinner, the mother shared something that had been weighing on her heart. You know, when I was locked in that basement, I prayed for a miracle. I never imagined it would come in the form of you. Elon shook his head. I'm not a miracle. I'm just someone who couldn't ignore what was happening. She smiled softly. Maybe that's what a miracle is, someone noticing when no one else does. Her words stayed with him long after he left that night. Driving home, he reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought him to their door. For all his grand visions of changing the world, this small act of kindness had reminded him of something profound. No matter how far humanity advanced, it was the simplest gestures, the wave of a child, the willingness to care, that made life worth living. The experience changed him in ways he hadn't expected. He began encouraging his companies to focus more on the human side of their innovations, ensuring that technology served people, not the other way around. He even started a foundation aimed at helping families in crisis, inspired by the girl and her mother. As for the little girl, her dream of becoming a scientist burned brighter than ever. Years later, she would credit that moment when a man she admired showed her kindness as the spark that fueled her ambition. She would go on to invent technologies that made life better for countless others, proving that a single act of compassion could ripple outward in ways no one could foresee. And every time Elon passed by that modest house on El Camino Real, he found himself glancing at the window, smiling at the memory of the girl who had unknowingly reminded him of the power of connection.